Hey guys, what's going on? We are going to go through the turn signals right now for the S197 to S550 swap. So let's get right into it. What you see on the screen here is a wiring diagram of how the multifunction switch works with relation to the high beams and the turn signals. So simply put and easy to understand, there is simple physical switches for your left turn signal, your right turn signal, your flash to pass, and your high beam in the S197. These are power sources that come from the smart junction box, and they go down here to the ground, and then once that happens, then that allows your right turn signal to turn on, your left turn signal, flash to pass, and so on. So how are we going to work this into the S550? Well, let's first understand how the S550 works. And we can do that by jumping over to the turn signals for the S550. Now, the issue with the S550 is that, as I mentioned in previous videos, everything goes through the steering column control module. So if you were to look up the diagram, in all data or your wiring diagrams, you would see that the multifunction switch simply lives within the steering column control module, and that's how it works. Then you hit a dead end. Well, you don't actually hit a dead end. What it actually is yes, the stalk, if you will, plugs directly into the steering column control module. However, if we get into the actual diagram or schematic of the multifunction control switch, you'll recognize that it operates very much similar to the S197 from a physical standpoint. So let's go through this diagram. This is the front of the circuit diagram or the circuit board. This is the rear of the circuit board. This is the connector that plugs directly into the steering column control module. If we look at this, your stalk is normally resting right here in the middle where nothing is activated in the S550 stalk. If you very lightly pull the stalk down, what you would be doing is you would be initiating the left turn. Well, what happens when you pull that down very lightly, it pulls into this space right here, and it will initiate this, what I like to call the light turn, right? So you're not pulling it down and engaging it, but it's kind of when you pull it just a hair and it doesn't get stuck, it returns to its original position. That's right here. And so that's going to be this line here, which comes to the other side, goes around here, and goes to pin number 3 on the connector. When you pull it down all the way and you pull it down hard, it engages and gets stuck. That would be this one. So now you're actually engaging both of these. But really the more critical one is this left turn down here, which comes through here and goes to connector pin number 4. Now, if you push it up very lightly, you're going to signal a right turn without actually engaging it. That's this light pink here, which comes around and goes to pin number 5. And then finally, when you push it all the way up and it engages, because you're going to make a right turn, that is the dark pink here, and that goes around to pin number 6. Your ground pin is obviously this center one, which is green, which ultimately comes through the entire board, but finishes off in pin number 8. Now, when it comes to the high beams, you have two things. You have your resting position, which is here. When you pull it in toward you as the driver, that is your flash to pass. You will have it come down here and create a connection between these 2 points. That is right here, and that goes across to pin number 2. And then finally, if you push it forward, that will go over here, which takes you to pin number 1. Okay? Now, the issue we have with the S550 that we don't have in the S197 is the following. In the S197, when you push the stalk forward away from you, the stalk will engage and it will stay engaged. In the S550, when you push the stalk away to engage your always-on high beams, it doesn't stay engaged. It's like it's similar to how the flash to pass operates in the S197, where you pull it and you let go, and it falls back to its resting position. That's because in the S550, all of these signals go to the steering column control module. So, in essence, that's something we're going to have to find a way to rectify. That when you put the high beams always on the S550, the switch does not stay engaged until you disengage it. It's only a momentary switch. Okay, great. So how do we address this? Well, a couple things. First, or let's talk about the major issues we have. The first one is this connector here is a proprietary connector from a company in Japan that I believe is Iris OELE. And this actual connector only has board-to-board connectors, a male and female. So the issue is we can't utilize that connector. That's the first one. We have to find a way to replace this. The second issue we have is that always-on toggle. So we have to figure out how to address that. Okay, so let's take a look at what solution I've come up with, which may not be the best solution, but it's a solution. So the first thing is we're in good shape from the sense of we can actually bypass the steering column control module for pretty much all of these functions and just make sure that it's wired into the correct pins in our C202 connector. Okay, so if you look on our C202 connector, C202 really just uses 5 pins. It has your ground in pin number 8. C202, in case you're not familiar, it's the original connector in the S197 that plugs into your multifunction switch. So pin number 8 is your ground. Pin number 6 is your always-on high beams. Pin number 4 is your flash to pass. Pin number 3 is going to be your right turn signal, and pin number 2 is going to be your left turn signal. So as long as we map each one of these pins correspondingly to each one of these corresponding pins in the connector in the car, we should be able to make this work, with the exception of the always-on high beams. Okay? So the first thing I decided to do was I decided to remove this connector because we can't use it. And all I did was replace it with a simple 8-pin JST connector. Now, the pitch on these is 1 millimeter on this original connector, the pitch between these pins. So you're going to need to order a 1 millimeter JST 8-pin connector. And you can see here, that's kind of the size of it relative to kind of anything you would see on your desk. And so I was using a magnifier to be able to solder those pins. You probably could do it by eye. So I would definitely go ahead and try to do it by eye if you don't have one of these, but I used it because it made life a lot easier for me. Then that allows you, now ignore this one because this is my wiper, but that allows you to have each one of the bare wires sticking out from an 8-pin JST connector. That's great. Now the only issue that we have here is that we need to find a way that when you momentarily initiate that always-on high beams, that you have something that keeps the high beams on. At the suggestion of someone in the KiCad Discord, they recommended this little tool on Amazon. I believe it's only like $10 for 2 of them. But what it basically does is when you initiate a momentary switch, it actually keeps the switch on until you initiate it again, which is great. That's exactly what we want. Unfortunately, it does need a power source. So what I'm going to do is tap into a key on power source. Obviously, we're not going to need the high beams when the key is not on. But you'll have your power source coming in here. You'll have your 2 lines coming in from your, these are the ones that go to the actual switch in the vehicle. Sorry, the pins in the harness. And then this right here is what you would wire to your stalk. So seems a little complicated, but I can show you guys that right here. So what you see here is my high beam switch. Now I have my ground. My ground is going to go to pin number 8, like I mentioned. Over here, I'm going to have my 2 left turns are going to come up here in pink and go to pin number 3. My 2 right turns are going to come over here and go to pin number 2. And then finally, my flash to pass is going to be wired straight into pin number 4 because the flash to pass doesn't have any issues. With this stalk, you're going to want to wire in for your always on high beams. It's going to go this way into the plug. Your ground is also going to go into the plug here. And then finally, the wires that are going to go directly into your C202 connector, pin 6, and your ground are going to be here, which will basically mean that when I push this stalk out, it's going to allow this to remain on using my external power source. And then when I initiate this and push it out again, it will break this contact and it will turn this off. Okay? Seems complicated, but it's not overly complicated. And the one really cool thing is that this actually fits inside the steering column control module assembly. So what you'll see here is my stalk. Here's my JST connector. And then what I've done is I've wired this in to this little brick, which actually fits in the housing. Okay, it's cool because if you remove the original steering column control module, you can fit this in here. Now, it doesn't fit with no issues. Unfortunately, because of the size of this relay, you actually have to modify your housing just a bit. So what you'll see is I cut a significant portion of the housing here out, but that allows me to actually put this housing on. And you can see it's relatively protected. None of this, with the exception of this, protrudes enough to make contact with anything in the car. And everything in here should hold itself together when this is actually installed in the vehicle. Again, because it is lower than even this plastic piece here. So all of this should be good to be installed. Now, you'll notice I did wire this into a male connector because this is going to plug actually directly into the connector that goes into the stock switch. Okay, this extra one here, don't worry about it. This one actually has to do with the wiper, which I'll get into in another episode. But I've created my own little harness. You can see here, it tucks in very nicely. Now, the JST connector, you only do technically use 7 out of all of the pins. So if I come back here, remember I used an 8-pin JST connector. If I come back and go to, over here, I have 1 pin that's unused. So that is this one here. Honestly, it doesn't connect to anything. So I am just going to leave it loose for you guys. Sorry, go back. So I'm just going to leave that loose and actually probably just tuck it in here. I may end up, you know what, actually, while we're here, so that we don't exercise bad electrical practice or really irresponsible electrical practice. So now that's covered, and we're going to tuck that inside. And now you have all of your pins going into your C202 connector. Again, follow the wiring diagrams as I showed them. And then over here, we have our, on Amazon, I just got an 18 gauge power supply. I'm sure 18 is overkill, but the reason I chose to do this is because I'm also going to be borrowing the same power supply as the heated steering wheel. So I wanted everything to be 18 gauge just in case. So all I did was plug that in over here, and that's loose so that when I have this installed, I can actually plug it directly into my wire in the car, and it will be powered. So that's it, guys. Again, I used crimp connectors over here just to connect these all together. There's crimp connectors inside of here, which allowed me to get the wire to be long enough to go into here. I'm a big fan of actually color coding my wires, so I have bought a ton of wire on mil-spec wiring. They have consistently delivered. The shipping is not, I wouldn't say it's not great. Wire is heavy, but It is expensive, so make sure if you're going to buy wire, you buy a ton of it all at once, everything you need, because you're going to want to maximize the potential for what you're paying in shipping. All right, well, guys, that is the first controller done, and I will catch you in the next one. See ya.